So the philosophy blogosphere has been erupting really for the past several weeks surrounding this issue of pluralism um, and whether or not one can remain a realist um, and still be a pluralist, or if pluralism implies accepting that there are many, while there may be many worldviews, many different ways that people believe and orient themselves in terms of their own psychological and cultural understandings and practices, there is, it turns out, really just one reality, and that reality, um, some would say, is determined for us by science, because science, allows nature to speak for itself. So the story goes. Science presents the facts as they are, without any metaphysical speculation or poetic license or moral um, connotation. Science is supposed to tell it like it is. It's straight talk, straight to the facts. No playing games. This kind of a realism is, well, I think the idea here is that this kind of a materialistic, scientific materialism as a realism, the idea that what's real finally are the mechanistic processes studied by physicists, and to the extent that they can mimic physics, biologists and psychologists, um, that what's finally real are just the atoms moving in the void, coming into various configurations with one another, but ultimately obeying the same fundamental laws that have always been true by fiat. Now, there's another kind of materialism or naturalism that people like, Lee Smolin as a contemporary example, the quantum physicist and cosmologist. Um, for Lee Smolin, the laws of physics have evolved in time. They're the result of historical processes, just like everything else that exists, and aren't somehow imposed upon the universe from eternity, but in fact become with and form within the ongoing adventure of cosmogenesis itself. So that when we do science from someone like Smolin's perspective, and I think also Smolin's drawing on Charles Saunders Peirce's work, the 19th century American philosopher, the pragmaticist. Uh, Peirce was the first to really say that nature doesn't obey laws. It's not a law-abiding system. It's a habit-forming process. It's nature for Peirce, as perhaps for Smolin, is alive. And another name here, of course, is Alfred North Whitehead. And when they talk about reality, when they talk about nature, they don't just mean a dead collection of products, but a living process, an ongoing creative evolutionary adventure, whose laws we can more or less determine now, but we can also understand the genesis of these laws in the past, and that these laws have emerged as the result of contingently achieved, uh, you know, uh, breaking points, thresholds that have been crossed where emergent, so-called emergent phenomena have appeared which couldn't have been predicted in advance. So when you get galaxies and stars, and when you get heavier atoms, and when you get planets with living cells and plants and animals and human societies, uh, you know, you if you were alive, if you were God, and you created the physical laws of the universe as they're understood today to the extent that they are understood today by physicists, even if you had a complete understanding of the physical world as God, or as, the physicist in possession of the theory of everything, you still, based on the way physics works today, you would have no way of predicting that biology would emerge, that there could be, as a result of these physical constants, living creatures with consciousness. There's nothing in the laws of physics, even in a theoretical future physics, a promised physics that would have offer a complete mathematical description of everything that there is. There's no reason to suppose that life or mind should have emerged from it. So, what Smolin and Peirce before him and Whitehead before him were trying to point to was, that we need a fully evolutionary cosmology. We need to historicize science and our scientific understanding of nature all the way down, not just in biology. Certainly Darwin had a lot to teach us about the historical basis for species, for biological form. But we need to go even further and recognize that all form, even physical form, atomic, electromagnetic, nuclear, that these forms of organization are also historical, and they evolved in time, and as such are, in fact, species of organism, forms of life. And through relationship, what we animals call sex, through erotic communication, erotic communion, really, these forms of life have evolved over the course of time into more complicated shapes and activities. So in terms of pluralism, then, I think with this second form of naturalism, this process naturalism, we're able to recognize many forms of life and grant them their value, their reality as values. So instead of supposing that there is one reality and that there's a fact of the matter about the way that one reality is, we could recognize that facts are achievements of evaluation. To determine a fact, there must be some life there, some form of life that is determining it as a fact, because it values for that organism as a fact, because it is of value to that organism as a fact. So yeah, we make facts, but we make facts, science is constructed, in other words, composed, in the sense that in order to achieve some understanding of the outside world, we must enter into relationship with that specific aspect of the world. And in that relationship, and through that relationship, we develop knowledge of that thing. But that thing has to help us, and we have to help it in order for this knowledge to emerge. We can't just coerce, and put nature on the rack in order to reveal its secrets. Nature needs to be approached as itself possessed of agency, and not just nature in general as an agent, but nature is an ecology of organisms of different shapes and sizes, and each of these organisms has agency, not just humans. So the human scientist is entering, as an agent, is entering into relationship with other agents, all the agents composing what the human calls nature, and forming alliances with these other organisms, building knowledges as, environments that then these organisms, we humans and the organisms we do science with, can share. Science is the building of human, non-human relationships, I think, if we're going to understand it in this new form, in this new way, a sort of, pan-experiential, process-relational understanding of science and nature. So we can't determine in advance how many valid how many valuable forms of life there are. And so we must always remain open to new forms of life emerging. And I think all of this is theoretical. We can do pluralistic theory, but pluralistic theory itself, and really what we should be after, anyways, is a practice. So theory is a form of practice, but there are more forms of practice than just theory. So a pluralistic practice, I think, is what we're really after. And that involves, a certain ethos, a certain ethic, a certain way of relating to other human beings and other beings, other organisms, human or not. So that's where the real action is, you know. And in order to get into the ethics, we need to have a conversation about that, right? Sort of by definition. So pluralism in the practical sense means always being open to ongoing conversation, not because anything goes, but because we exist together in a creative universe, and together we are engaged in the process of continuing to create. I can't pretend to know in advance of what you may know what is right. I must await, a future interlocutor who might help me come to know. Consciousness itself means knowing together, right? If you break it down etymologically. So we're always together in this. And I think that's what a pluralistic praxis assumes, and certainly a theory of the pluriverse, as James called it, rather than universe. The pluriverse, a theory of the pluriverse, is also a form of practice, a way of writing, and in so writing about the plurality of worlds, the plurality of modes of being, we help to generate them in our imaginations, in the imagination of readers, and thereby, hopefully, we bring about a practice of pluralism, of being many, being among many, being yourself many. So, just some, a plethora of ideas about pluralism for you. I'll post some links to some writing in the description, which would be a helpful supplement to all of that. Thanks for listening.